Video games are a one big lie, and their creators are gods of truth and falsehood. We let them lie to us to have fun. Here's how games and their developers are notoriously lying to you, and an explanation why it's a good thing.
Wake up, Mr. Freeman. Wake up and smell the ashes.
Hi, my name is Szymon Adamus, and these are the amazing games. Games are weird. Think about it. By entering the game world, you agree to be covered by a series of rules that limit your behavior. And it is these restrictions that often make the activity pleasant. A football, aka soccer, match wouldn't be so exciting if the ball could be picked up with hands. Tetris would not be one of the most recognizable games in history if every falling element fell perfectly into every hole. Tyler Durden hates all the rules governing the world of yappies, but the first thing he does after founding Fight Club is creating rules of Fight Club. And Tyler knows what fun is. Bernard Suits, an American philosopher and professor in the book The Grasshopper, Games, Life and Utopia, wrote, "To play a game is to attempt to achieve a specific state of affairs using only means permitted by rules, where the rules prohibit use of more efficient in favor of less efficient means, and where the rules are accepted just because they make possible such activity." To put it more simply, playing a game is the voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. Think about it. We voluntarily agree to overcome unnecessary obstacles. We create obstacles for ourselves, and overcoming them is an integral part of playing the game. In the case of soccer, the matter is quite simple. Although the offside cannot be understood by anyone who don't give a damn about the game, the rules of this game are quite clear, written down and systemized. All the player has to do is to follow them, and if he wants to bend them, he must do it as skillfully as Ronaldo pretending to be injured. Now think about the games children create for themselves. As long as it's a game of hide and seek or tag, the rules and restrictions are quite clear. However, when we talk about games created on the spot, it suddenly turns out that the rules become more fluid. An attempt to describe specific rules of a very complex game often leads to the creation of huge volumes of very specific, very structured and wonderfully nerdish knowledge. In 2012, Wizards of the Coast announced the start of work on the 5th edition of the paper RPG system Dungeons & Dragons. Mike Merles, the main designer of this edition, said,
"I can't emphasize that enough. We're very serious about taking the time we need to get this right."
The work lasted 2 years. The base compendium of knowledge of the 5th edition of D&D game was 320 pages long. The basic game rules, which can be downloaded as a digital PDF file, are 180 pages long, and all of this is just the foundations. Next to them, dozens of books, campaign guides, modules and other extensions were published. Do you remember those unnecessary obstacles? In the case of D&D, there are quite a few of them. In video games, the situation is similar. It is very simple to describe the rules of Tetris. Falling blocks can only be moved left, right and down. The game ends when the elements touch the top of the edge of the board. Removing layers is only possible by creating a straight horizontal line. Of course, as the game progresses, it speeds up, the blocks have different shapes and so on. But the basic rules of the game are very simple. Now try to make a similar list for The Witcher 3 or Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's possible, of course. These game worlds are governed by specific rules and restrictions. However, their list could be longer than the Dungeons & Dragons guide. And this is where the lying happens. While the player bending the rules of the video game is like Ronaldo pretending to be injured, his behavior does not interest anyone until he starts playing with others. The video game developers have a much greater responsibility. Which of hundreds or even thousands of rules governing the world of complicated video games should the developer communicate openly to the player? Which should be hidden and which banned? Game developers lie to us notoriously, and not just in a visual matters, using for example simpler terrain models for backgrounds to save computing power. They even lie to us about the principles that govern their worlds. For example, the last life points in Assassin's Creed Origins or Doom 2016 are not worth the same percentage as the rest. This is a trick used in many action games designed to give the player the impression of surviving with the last strength, getting out of oppression at the last second. In Left 4 Dead, zombies don't always attack accidentally. The player who is furthest away from the rest of the group is attacked the most. Thanks to this, he can never relax, take a break from fighting living dead, because as soon as he tries to do it, zombies try to take him down and eat his brains. In Half-Life 2, you experience many exciting and spectacular situations, not because you are so lucky, but because the creators wanted you to. For example, if Strider knows that he will not hit the player, he can still shoot if there is something next to him to destroy, which will make a nice, spectacular effect. In Quake 3, the area damage from rocket launcher can be from 1 to 100 life points, but when a player shoots himself, the value drops by 50%. It's all for you, dear player, so you could perform these sweet rocket jumps. One of the most interesting systems of this type is the percentage chance of hitting the enemy in XCOM series. For example, at a lower difficulty level in XCOM 2, 85% chance of hitting an opponent does not really mean 85%. According to Jake Solomon, the main designer of this game, this value is often closer to 95%. All this so that the psychological, emotional expectation of the player, seeing a very high chance percentage, is satisfied more often than its actual mathematical value. Jake Solomon explains. Random is never the way people expect it to be. Whether it's a sequence of shots that you think is impossible, or a sequence of misses you think is impossible, or seeing patterns in the nicknames your soldiers get. We are human beings. We see patterns. Do these and hundreds of other examples mean that video games are lying to us? Yes! Of course yes! Non-stop. Is it wrong? Not if you want to have fun playing them. This is not a new issue at all. Rules are an integral part of games, but no one said they cannot be banned. Many game masters of a paper RPGs use the rules of the systems in which the gameplay takes place in a very liberal way. The most important thing to them is a good fun and strong emotions, not the rules themselves. Often behind a very literal physical curtain, the dungeon master screen, they make dice rolls which may or may not always be true. Opinions on fudging dice rolls by the game master are divided, but one thing is certain. The big problem is not changing dice values, it's when players realize that it's happening. The game master and therefore the creator of video game is not player's opponent, but he is not his friend either. His task is to create an interesting, moving adventure that we will get something out of. Something that we can't find outside the game world. If he has to hide something from us from time to time to achieve this, well, this is the right and perhaps the obligation of the creator.
Rules are really just there to keep the game moving. They're a tool for the DM. You know, they're kind of like an artist's paint. The paint isn't what's important, it's the picture.
Thanks for visiting my channel. If you liked my video, please leave a comment and let's get to know each other better. Take care, bye.